The sun was strong in Ezekiel's village. He was 15 years old. He saw the same problem every year. When the rains did not come, the ground became hard and cracked. The maize plants in the fields turned yellow and then brown. They were like tired old men, bent over and weak. The river shrank to a thin, muddy line. The goats and cows grew thin because there was not enough grass for them to eat. Hunger was a quiet visitor that stayed too long. It sat in the corner of every home, making everyone's stomach ache with worry. The laughter of children became quiet. The air felt heavy with sadness. Ezekiel watched the elders look at the empty blue sky. They prayed for clouds, for the sweet relief of rain. But the sky remained clear and unforgiving. At the market, the price of food was very high. Many families could not afford to buy enough ugali or sukuma wiki. Ezekiel's own family had only one small meal each day. He saw the tired look in his mother's eyes. He felt the emptiness in his own belly. He knew this was not right. There had to be another way. The village could not just wait for the rain to decide their fate. He was young, but he felt a heavy weight on his shoulders. He often walked through the village, observing everything. He saw women throwing away the soft, wet insides of pumpkins and melons after scooping out the flesh. They also threw away the seeds from tomatoes and peppers. To them, it was just waste, something to be discarded without a second thought. But to Ezekiel, an idea began to form. It was a tiny idea, like one of the seeds he saw in the dirt. He wondered, what if these rejected things could be used? What if the things people saw as garbage held the secret to fighting the hunger that plagued them all? He felt a small spark of curiosity ignite within him. This spark grew into a quiet determination. Ezekiel decided he would not just watch and wait anymore. He would not let the sun defeat his village. He would not let hunger steal the smiles from his friends' faces. He believed that even one person could make a difference. He knew it would be hard work. He knew some people might think his idea was foolish, but the image of his hungry neighbors and the sight of the dry, cracked earth gave him a strength he did not know he had. He was ready to try something new, something that might bring life back to the thirsty land. Ezekiel began his mission quietly. He did not announce his plan to everyone. He started by collecting the things that others threw away. He went to the rubbish piles behind the market stalls. He carefully picked out the pumpkin seeds, the tomato seeds, and the small white seeds from the sweet peppers. His hands got dirty, but he did not mind. He washed the seeds in a small bowl of water and laid them out on a flat stone to dry in the sun. He treated each seed like a tiny treasure. He saw not just a seed, but the promise of a plant, the promise of food. Behind his family's small home, there was a patch of forgotten ground. It was full of weeds and hard soil. No one ever used it. Ezekiel decided this would be his garden. He took his father's old panga, a large knife, and began to chop away the weeds. The work was difficult. The sun beat down on his back, and sweat dripped from his forehead. He dug into the hard earth with a broken shovel, turning the soil over and over. He broke up the large clumps of dirt until the ground was soft and ready. He felt his muscles ache, but he did not stop. He was building a new beginning. Once the soil was prepared, Ezekiel carefully planted his collected seeds. He made small, neat rows with his fingers. He placed each seed into the earth with great care. He covered them gently with soil, as if tucking a small child into bed. He knew that water was the biggest problem. The river was far, and carrying water was hard work. So he saved the water used for washing dishes and clothes. It was not much, but it was enough for his small garden. Every morning and every evening, he would give his tiny plants a little drink, whispering words of encouragement to them. Days turned into weeks. Ezekiel watched his garden with an anxious heart. Then one morning, he saw it. A tiny green sprout pushed its way through the dark soil, then another and another. It was a miracle. Life was growing where there was once only dust and waste. The small green leaves were a beautiful sight. They were a sign that his idea was not foolish. They were a sign of hope. Seeing those first sprouts filled Ezekiel with a powerful joy. He knew then that he was on the right path. His secret garden was the start of something much bigger. Soon, Ezekiel's small garden was no longer a secret. His friends Jomo and Adia saw the green patch behind his house. They were amazed. While their families worried about the lack of food, Ezekiel was growing it. "How did you do this?" Jomo asked, his eyes wide with surprise. Ezekiel smiled and explained his simple method. He showed them how he collected the discarded seeds. He demonstrated how he prepared the soil and used leftover water. He did not keep his knowledge to himself. He wanted to share it, to spread the hope that was growing in his garden. Ezekiel invited his friends to join him. "We can do more if we work together," he told them. Jomo and Adia were excited. They started collecting seeds with him. Soon, other young people in the village noticed. They saw the growing pumpkins, the healthy tomato plants, and the tall stalks of Sukuma wiki. They saw that Ezekiel and his friends were not hungry. They wanted to learn too. Ezekiel became their teacher. He was patient and kind. He showed them how to choose the best seeds and how to make the soil soft and rich for planting. The group of young farmers grew quickly. They called themselves the Young Farmers Brigade. They found a larger piece of unused land near the edge of the village. It was big enough for everyone to have their own small plot. They worked as a team. Some dug and prepared the soil. Others were in charge of collecting seeds. A few of the older boys organized a schedule to carry water from the river in the early morning, when it was cool. They laughed and sang as they worked. The hard labor did not feel so difficult when they did it together. Their collective garden began to flourish. It was a beautiful sight, a bright green oasis in the middle of the dry landscape. The young people learned from each other. They experimented with different plants. They learned which ones grew best in the hot sun and which ones needed more shade. They were no longer just waiting for help. They were creating their own solutions. The Young Farmers Brigade was more than just a group of gardeners. It was a community of friends who were working together to build a better future for their village. The day of the first big harvest was a celebration for the whole village. The Young Farmers Brigade had grown more food than they could have imagined. There were big round pumpkins, bright red tomatoes, and baskets full of green leafy vegetables. The young farmers proudly carried their produce to the village center. They did not sell the food. Instead, they shared it. They gave a portion to every family, making sure that the elderly and those with small children received extra. The sight of so much fresh food brought tears to the eyes of many of the elders. The impact of the community garden was immediate and profound. Families that once had only one meal a day now had enough to eat. Children were healthier and had more energy to play and go to school. The village market changed too. The brigade began to sell their surplus vegetables at a very fair price, which helped other food sellers to lower their own prices. The garden provided more than just food. It provided nourishment for the entire community's spirit. People started to smile more. The heavy feeling of worry began to lift, replaced by a sense of security and pride. Ezekiel's idea had grown like one of his seeds, from a tiny thought into a life-changing project. The Young Farmers Brigade became a permanent institution in the village. They taught the younger children how to garden, ensuring that the knowledge would be passed down through generations. They even started a seed bank, carefully drying and storing the best seeds from each harvest, so they would be prepared for the next planting season. They were no longer dependent on the unpredictable rains alone. They had learned to create their own sustenance, to work with the land in a new way. Ezekiel, once just a quiet boy, was now seen as a young leader, but he remained humble. He knew that the success was not his alone. It belonged to everyone who had worked together. He had simply planted a seed of an idea, and the community had nurtured it into a forest of hope. When he looked at the green, thriving garden, he saw more than just plants. He saw resilience. He saw the strength of his people.